Hello, and welcome to Reformed Thinking. It's good to have you back with us.
It is.
We are opening up the library again, cracking the spine on some old books, and really trying to get our heads around the mechanics of the Christian life.
Mm-hmm.
And today, we're doing something a little bit different. Usually, we take a doctrine, we chase it down through history.
Right.
Today, we are taking one specific text, Psalm 77, and we are just going to walk through it line by line.
Yeah, but we aren't just reading it cold. We're looking at it through a very specific set of lenses. We've got the commentary of Charles Spurgeon from his huge work, The Treasury of David.
Massive.
It really is. And we're filtering all of that through the theological framework of the Westminster Confession.
So we're going to see how the rubber of, high-minded Reformed theology actually hits the road of real, gut-wrenching human emotion.
I think that combination is going to surprise some people.
Yeah.
There's this stereotype out there that Reformed theology is all head and no heart.
Oh, yeah. All logic, predestination, order. Yeah. People think of it as cold.
It's a really common misconception.
Yeah.
But when you look at the Puritans, or you look at the Westminster Divines, or you look at a guy like Spurgeon, you find the complete opposite. You find a theology that is incredibly robust when things go wrong.
That's the test, isn't it?
It is. It's easy to have a fluffy theology when the sun is shining.
Yeah.
But when you're in the dark, you need something with a backbone.
You do.
You need to know that God is sovereign, that you are frail, and that the Scripture is objectively true, regardless of how you feel in the moment.
And that distinction between what we feel and what is true, that's going to be the main battleground of this whole discussion, I think.
I think so.
So we're looking at Psalm 77. The author is Asaph. Now, I feel like Asaph he's the guy in the band that nobody knows the name of.
Yeah.
Everyone knows David. David is the front man. He's the lead singer.
That's a really fair comparison. David is the warrior king. He writes the hits. He had these incredible highs and these just crushed lows. But Asaph is different.
How so?
Well, Spurgeon describes him as a man of an exercised mind.
Exercised, like he's been to the gym.
Exercised like he's working something out. He's thoughtful. He's contemplative. And the source material points out something really fascinating about his musical style.
What's that?
It says Asaph specializes in the minor key.
The minor key. If you play piano or guitar, you know exactly what that sounds like.
You do?
It's tension, it's melancholy, it doesn't resolve the way you expect it to.
Right. It has a dash of sadness to it. But Spurgeon argues that this isn't just sadness for the sake of being sad. He says this minor key gives the song a tonic flavor.
A tonic, like medicine.
Precisely. If all you eat is sugar, if all your worship songs are happy, clappy, major key anthems, you eventually get sick.
You get spiritual diabetes.
You do. You need the bitters. You need the minor key to actually cure the soul. Asaph is essential because he's so honest about the darkness.
The notes we have say that to understand Asaph, you must have done business on the great waters.
I love that phrase.
Me too.
It implies that spiritual maturity isn't something you get in a classroom. It's something you get in a storm.
Yeah.
You have to go out into the deep water where it's dangerous, where the waves are over your head, and you have to do business with God right there. If you haven't been through that, Asaph might just sound like he's whining.
Sure.
But if you have been there, Asaph sounds like a lifeline.
So our mission today is to look at the anatomy of spiritual depression. And I use that word anatomy on purpose because we are going to dissect it. We're going to take it apart to see how it works and hopefully find the cure.
And the song gives us a great structure for that. It breaks down into two very distinct moves.
Okay.
The first half, verses 1 through 9, that's the breakdown. It's the trouble, the pleading, the confusion. It's very subjective. Lots of I and me.
All about his feelings.
All about his feelings. Then, at verse 10, there's a pivot, a huge one. The second half, verses 10 through 20, is the recovery. It shifts to the objective lots of God and thou.
Okay, let's start the dissection then. Section 1, the anatomy of sorrow. Verse 1 begins, I cried unto God with my voice. Now, I want to stop right on that word cried, because we usually say, I prayed to God. We don't often say, I cried to God.
Cried is the right word. The Hebrew implies a shriek or a shout. Spurgeon notes that these are not stately, stilted words.
It's not a prepared speech?
Not at all. This isn't the prayer you pray at the beginning of a church potluck. This is a guttural, unfeigned expression of pain.
And he emphasizes, with my voice. I cried unto God with my voice. Why does that even matter? God hears our thoughts. He knows what we need before we ask. Why do we need to make noise?
It's a question of pressure. Have you ever been in so much physical pain like you Smashed your thumb with a hammer or something that you just yelled?
Oh, absolutely. It's involuntary.
You didn't decide to yell. The pain forced the sound out of you.
Right.
That is what is happening here spiritually. The soul is under such immense pressure that it's compelled to use vocal utterance just to vent the agony.
Okay.
But there's another layer to it. Spurgeon uses this really vivid analogy of an alarm bell.
I wanted to bring that up. He says it's a comfort to hear the alarm bell ringing when the house is invaded by thieves.
Think about that image for a second. Your soul is the house.
Okay.
The thieves are doubts, despair, maybe even demonic accusation. They've broken in. Now, if the house is silent, that's terrifying.
Because it means the thieves have taken control, they've cut the phone lines, they're working in the dark.
Correct. Silence means the enemy is winning. But the cry, the noise of prayer, that's the alarm bell. It means the homeowner is awake. It means they're resisting. It means they're calling for help. So even though the cry sounds like pure pain, it's actually a sign of life.
As long as you're screaming for God, you haven't been conquered.
Exactly. You haven't
given up.
And he didn't just do it once. The text says, even unto God with my voice. And then it implies a repetition. He kept at it.
Perseverance. He cried again. The gate of grace opens to the steady knock. You don't just ring the bell once and walk away. You lean on the buzzer.
But here's where it gets really tricky. He's leaning on the buzzer, he's crying out, and he isn't feeling better.
Yeah. Verse 2 says, in the day of my trouble I sought the Lord. My sore ran in the night and ceased not.
My sore ran in the night. I mean, that is a graphic image.
It sounds like a medical condition. It sounds awful.
It's a metaphor for a grief that just will not heal. The literal translation suggests a hand stretched out in prayer, or maybe a hand that's wet from constantly wiping away tears.
But the point is, it ceased not.
It's continuous. It's like a bleeding wound that refuses to scab over.
And then we hit this phrase that honestly confuses me. My soul refused to be comforted.
Yeah, my soul refused to be comforted.
That sounds stubborn. I mean, if you're in pain and someone offers you comfort, you take it. Why would a believer refuse comfort? Is he just being difficult here?
It does sound like petulance, doesn't it? Like a child pouting in the corner.
A little bit, yeah.
But we have to look at this through the lens of human frailty. So why do we refuse comfort? Well, sometimes the comfort that's being offered is just fake.
I mean, like bad advice, platitudes.
Exactly. Cheer up. It could be worse. Or God never gives you more than you can handle.
Oh, I hate that one.
Me too. If you're in deep trauma, those words are not comfort. They're insults. So the soul rightly rejects them.
That makes sense. You spit out bad medicine.
You do. But there's a deeper, darker psychological reality happening here. Think of a man who is physically sick. He has a high fever. You bring him his favorite meal, a steak. What does he do?
He turns away. The smell of it probably makes him nauseous.
Right. The food is good. The steak is nourishing. But his capacity to receive it is broken by the sickness.
Okay.
Spiritual depression creates a kind of nausea of the soul. You read a promise in the Bible, a good, nourishing promise, and instead of feeling hope, you feel sick. You push it away.
The Reformers had a lot to say about this, didn't they? They didn't just chalk it up to feeling down.
No, they saw a moral dimension to it, too.
Yeah.
And Spurgeon gets very pointed here. He says we can succumb to a sullenness.
Sullenness.
He calls it the daughter of despondency, or, my favorite, the son of sorrow hugging his chains.
Wow. Hugging his chains. That's a brutal image. It suggests we can fall in love with our own misery.
We do. We absolutely can. We can become addicted to the narrative of being the victim. We can start to think, my situation is so unique, so terrible, that God's common grace doesn't apply to me.
And that's a form of pride.
It's a perverse form of pride. It's an unhumbled pride that says, I am the exception to God's mercy.
So when we refuse comfort, we are actually elevating our suffering above God's ability to heal it.
That's it. We're making an idol out of our own pain.
And that leads right into verse 3, which contains a paradox that is frankly terrifying if you think about it. I remembered God and was troubled.
Stop and let that land for a second. I remembered God and was troubled.
That just shouldn't happen. The Bible is full of commands to remember God. Remembering God is supposed to be the solution.
It's the balm.
It is. But here, Asaph says remembering God is the source of the trouble. How is that possible?
This is where good theology really matters. Who is God? He's not just a benevolent grandfather in the sky. He's a holy. He is just. He is all-knowing. He is true.
Oh, okay.
Now imagine you're in a state of guilt. Imagine your conscience is tender. You feel like a failure. You feel dirty. When you think of a holy God, is that comforting?
No. He just highlights the dirt. It makes it worse.
It terrifies you.
Yeah.
When you think of a just God and you know you've sinned,
Yeah.
is that comforting?
No, it means punishment is coming. Judgment.
Even God's truth is scary because if he's true to his word, he must judge sin. So to the jaundiced mind, that's the term the source uses, every single attribute of God has a dark side.
So we project our fear onto God's character.
We do. Even the brightness of his love can blind us. We look at his love and we think, oh, that's for other people. That's for the super Christians. I have neither part nor lot in it.
Yeah.
And that suspicion causes the spirit to just sink. The source talks about inward disquietudes returning like raging billows. You're just getting hammered by waves of theological panic.
And right there, right when the panic is at its absolute peak, we see the word Selah.
Salah.
Most people just skip that word when they read the Psalms. They treat it like a typo or a page number or something.
Well, the musical instruction, most likely. It means applause or a lift. But in this context, Spurgeon calls it sorrow taking a breath.
That totally changes how I read it. It's not just a musical rest. It's a physical necessity.
Think about sobbing. That deep, heaving kind of crying where your chest hurts. Eventually, you have to stop just to gasp for air.
Right.
That gasp is the Selah. It's the moment where the psalmist has to stop speaking because he physically cannot continue. He takes a breath, wipes his eyes, and then he plunges back in.
And when he plunges back in section 2, we see the physical toll this is taking on him. Verses 4 through 6, we start with insomnia. Verse 4, thou holdest mine eyes waking.
Notice the grammar again. He doesn't say, I have insomnia. He doesn't say, the coffee was too strong.
He says thou holdest. He's blaming God for it.
He's attributing the action to God. This is the Westminster Confession coming through. God is the first cause of all things. Psalm 127 says God gives his beloved sleep.
Right.
So logic dictates that if sleep is withheld, God is the one withholding it.
Wow. That is a hard pill to swallow at 3 in the morning. You're lying there staring at the ceiling, and you have to admit, God, you are doing this to me.
It's hard, but it's also grounding. Because if God is doing it, there must be a reason. It isn't random. It isn't chaos. It's a severe mercy, maybe, but it's from his hand.
But the sleeplessness leads to silence. The verse continues, I am so troubled that I cannot speak. We've gone from the loud cry in verse 1 to total silence in verse 4.
Great griefs are dumb. That is the phrase. Shallow brooks brawl and make a lot of noise. A little stream makes a lot of splashing.
Mm-hmm.
But deep rivers, the Mississippi, it runs silent.
Yeah.
When you are in the deep end of sorrow, language fails you. You just run out of words.
The source mentions Niobe from Greek mythology.
Yes, the mother who lost all her children and wept until she turned to stone, or Sementius, the Egyptian king. He watched his friend be led to death, and he wept. But then he watched his own children be led to death, and he stood silent.
The grief was too big for tears.
Too big for words. Too big for anything.
So what do you do when you can't pray, when you literally cannot find the words?
This is where the doctrine of God's omniscience becomes a real comfort. The source reminds us that even when we can't speak to men and can hardly speak to God, the Father understands the silence. It references King Hezekiah, who said he could only chatter like a crane or a swallow, just making noises.
Bird noises.
God understands bird noises. The source says tears have a grammar. God parses the syntax of our weeping. He knows what the silence means. You don't need to be eloquent to be heard by him.
So Asaph is sleepless, and he's speechless. In verse 5, he tries a technique that I think we all try at some point. He tries nostalgia. I have considered the days of old.
He's looking for a lifeline. He thinks, if I can just remember the good old days, maybe I'll feel better. He is ransacking the past to try and light the gloom of the present.
But it doesn't work.
No, it backfires completely. And this is a danger the Puritans warned about all the time. When you're depressed, looking at your own past can be a trap. You look at the venerable experiences of ancient saints, or you look at your own spiritual high points and you compare them to your current misery.
And the contrast just makes you feel worse. It digs the hole deeper.
It highlights the loss. You think, look how much God seemed to love me then. Why has he stopped? The jaundiced mind sees everything through a yellow fog. It twists every good memory into an accusation against God.
Verse 6 breaks my heart a little. I call to remembrance my song in the night. He used to sing.
He used to be a nightingale. He could sing in the dark. Now he's just a comrade to the owl. He's lost his music.
Yeah.
But notice what he does. He doesn't just wallow in it. The text says his spirit made diligent search.
The Hebrew word there is chaphaz.
Which means to strip something naked, to lift up the coverings and search fold by fold. He is taking his own soul apart.
He's looking for the problem, for the root cause.
He's introspecting. He's digging into his spirit to find the abomination, the secret sin, the hidden idol that is causing God to hide his face from him.
It's like taking a watch apart to find the one broken gear.
And that's hard work.
Hmm.
It's easy to spy faults in other people. We all have 20/20 vision for other people's sins. But it is hard work to take your own heart to pieces like a watchmaker. Asaph's doing that hard work.
And as he takes the watch apart, he starts asking questions. This brings us to section 3, the battle of questions, verses 7 through 9.
These verses are a machine gun of anxiety. He fires off 6 specific questions. And these aren't just casual questions. These are the interrogation of unbelief.
Let's just read them. Will the Lord cast off forever? Will he be favorable no more? Is his mercy clean gone forever?
Oof.
Doth his promise fail forevermore? Hath God forgotten to be gracious? And hath he in anger shut up his tender mercies?
He is attacking the very nature of God. He's going right to the heart of everything.
He is questioning the unchangeable attributes of God.
Right. Hath God forgotten? Just think about that. Can an omniscient God forget? Doth his promise fail? Can a truthful God lie?
These questions are terrifying because they suggest the entire universe is broken. If God can forget to be gracious, then the sky is falling. Nothing is certain.
But the source material argues that these very questions are also the cure.
How can the questions possibly be the cure? They sound like the problem.
Because Asaph is putting his unbelief through a catechism. He is forcing his fear to speak clearly.
What do you mean?
Usually fear is a vague, shapeless cloud in the back of our minds. What if God hates me? Asaph forces that fear onto the witness stand and cross-examines it.
He's using logic against his feelings.
He's using a reductio ad absurdum. That's a logic term. It means taking an argument to its extreme logical limit to show that it's ridiculous.
Walk us through that with one of these.
Okay, take the question. Hath God forgotten to be gracious? Asaph asks it. Then he has to answer it. If the answer is yes, then God is not God, because God, by definition, cannot have amnesia. If God ceases to be gracious, he ceases to be God. Since God cannot cease to be God, the answer must be no.
So by asking the worst possible question, he forces himself to realize the absolute impossibility of it.
Exactly. He corners his own fear. He realizes that while God may leave his people for a season, he might hide his face. The idea that he would cast them off forever is monstrous folly. It is theologically impossible.
So he uses the objective truth of who God is to crush the subjective fear of what he feels.
That is the Reformed method right there. Truth over feelings every time.
And that leads to the pivot point, the fulcrum of the entire psalm, section 4, verse 10. And I said, this is my infirmity.
This is the diagnosis. He stops the questioning. He puts down the interrogator's lamp, and he points the finger at himself. This doubting, this panic, this questioning is my infirmity.
What exactly does he mean by infirmity?
It means weakness. It means sickness. He's admitting, the problem isn't that God has changed. The problem is that I am weak. It's a disease of my faith.
But the source offers another interpretation that I find really helpful. It says it could also mean, this is my appointed sorrow.
And that is a subtle but powerful shift. If it's my infirmity, it's a weakness I need to get over. But if it's my appointed sorrow, it's a burden I need to carry.
I see.
It's the realization that the season of darkness has been measured out by the Lord. It is my portion of the cup.
And once he accepts that, he can move forward. The second half of verse 10. I will remember the years of the right hand of the Most High.
The right hand.
Hey, we see that phrase all over Scripture. What does it signify?
Power. Executive action. A soldier holds his sword in his right hand. A king holds his scepter in his right hand. It represents God's active ruling power in history.
So Asaph stops looking at his own sore, his wound, and starts looking at God's right hand, his power.
That is the cure. You cannot cure spiritual depression by staring at your own navel. You have to look out. You have to look up. And specifically, Asaph decides to look back at history.
This brings us to section 5, the cure. Verses 11 and 12 give us a very specific 3-step process. And I think this is where the rubber meets the road for anyone listening who is in this state. What do you do? Step 1, remember.
Verse 11, I will remember the works of the Lord. The source calls memory a fit handmaid for faith.
Spurgeon uses that analogy of Joseph in Egypt here, right?
He does, and it's brilliant. You remember the story of Joseph? He stored up grain during the 7 years of plenty so that there would be food during the 7 years of famine.
Right? He was prepared.
Spurgeon says our memory should work the exact same way. When you're in a season of plenty, when God feels close, when prayers are answered, when life is good, you need to store those memories up.
You need to pack them into the granaries of your mind.
You do, because why?
Because the famine is coming.
The famine is coming. And when you're in the 7 years of spiritual famine, when you feel nothing, you go to the granary. You open the doors of memory and you feed on what God did in the past. Faith lives on the canned goods of memory during the winter.
That is so practical. If you don't journal, if you don't mark the moments of grace in your life, you starve when the winter comes.
You absolutely do. And notice he mentions wonders in the plural. I will remember thy wonders of old. He doesn't just remember the one big thing. He remembers the details. All of God's works are wonders.
Okay, so step 2 is meditate. Verse 12, I will meditate also of all thy work.
This is different from just remembering. Remembering is recalling the fact. Meditating is chewing on it. It's rumination.
Like a cow chewing the cud.
Exactly. You bring the fact up from your memory and you grind it down. You extract every bit of nutrition from it. And Spurgeon has a sharp critique here. He says, many professors, I mean people who profess faith, have barren conversation because they take no time for contemplation.
We're too busy. We just skim the surface of things.
We snack. We don't feast. You cannot get the deep nutrition of the Psalms by skimming them on your phone while you wait for a latte. You have to sit with them. You have to meditate.
And that leads directly to step 3, talk. And talk of thy doings.
Meditation must lead to speech. If you only meditate and never share it, Spurgeon says you are a mental miser.
A mental miser, hoarding the spiritual wealth.
You're like a mill that grinds corn only for the miller. The goal of theology is not just your own stability, it's the edification of the whole body. When you talk about God's goodness, even when you're struggling, it has a consoling efficacy.
It helps the listener, sure, but does it really help the speaker?
Absolutely. There's something about articulating the truth that makes it real to your own heart. When you hear your own voice declaring the works of God, it preaches a sermon to your own soul.
There's an analogy here I don't want to miss. The hound.
Oh yeah, the hunting dog. When a hound loses the scent of the prey, what does it do? It doesn't just sit down and quit. It hunts backward. It circles back to the last place it had the scent.
That is a great image for the believer.
When you lose the scent of God's presence, when you feel totally lost, go back. Go back to the last place you knew he was there. Go back to the last clear evidence of his grace in your life. Hunt backward until you recover the trail.
It's like finding a receipt that proves you own your house. You find that one note, that one memory, and it can save you from the prison of despair.
So Asaph has his plan. He's going to remember. He's going to meditate. He's ready to talk. And where does his mind go? It goes to 2 places. This is section 6. He sees God in the sanctuary, and he sees God in the sea.
Verse 13, thy way, O God, is in the sanctuary. Or the marginal reading says, in holiness.
The sanctuary, this is the place of clarity. This is the temple. Here, everything is ordered. The law is clear. The sacrifice is clear. The presence of God is localized right over the Ark of the Covenant.
In the sanctuary, we understand the philosophy of providence.
We see the why. We see that God is holy. We see that everything he does is ultimately righteous. When we're in the sanctuary, in worship, in the Word, we get the big picture. We see the blueprint.
But then, verse 19 throws a massive curveball. Thy way is in the sea.
This is the contrast. The sanctuary is clear. The sea is a total mess.
Yeah.
It's mysterious, it's trackless, it's chaotic. Thy footsteps are not known.
Martin Luther had a profound thought on this, didn't he?
Luther spoke of hearing God say to him in his struggles, I am not to be traced. God walks on the water. You cannot track footprints in the ocean. As soon as he steps, the water fills in the space. There's no trail.
The source brings in a modern science connection here about ocean currents.
It's a really helpful illustration. We know now that there are massive currents paths in the sea. The Gulf Stream, for example. Ancient sailors didn't know they were there, but the currents were moving their ships anyway.
God has a path.
God has a specific ordained path for your life, a current. But to you, looking over the side of the boat, it just looks like swirling, chaotic water.
Yeah.
You can't see the path. You just have to trust the captain.
So we have to reconcile the sanctuary and the sea.
That is the key to spiritual stability.
Oh.
You have to know that God's way is holy, that's the sanctuary, even when it is hidden, that's the sea. You interpret the mystery of the sea through the certainty of the sanctuary.
So you say, I don't know what God is doing right now, sea, but I know who God is, sanctuary.
That's good. That's solid ground. And Asaph needs that solid ground because the memory he pulls up next is the ultimate sea circumstance. He goes back to the Exodus, section 7.
The Exodus Theophany, verses 14 to 18. This is some high drama.
It really is.
He starts by calling God the God that doest wonders.
Not just has wonders, like they're in a museum. He does them. It's his habit. He's an active God.
And then he describes the redemption of the sons of Jacob and Joseph. Why mention Joseph specifically? It's usually just sons of Jacob.
It's an interesting detail.
Yeah.
Jacob is the father of the nation, sure, but Joseph was the provider. Joseph was the one who went into the darkness of Egypt first to save the family. It highlights God's providence in using suffering Joseph's slavery to bring about salvation for the whole family.
Okay, so when we think of the Red Sea crossing, I think most of us picture the movie version. You know, Charlton Heston. The walls of water stand up, the ground is dry, the wind blows. They just walk across. It's majestic, but it's orderly.
Asaph remembers it very differently. Look at verses 16 through 18. This isn't a parade. It's a catastrophe for the Egyptians.
The waters saw thee, O God, the waters saw thee. They were afraid. The depths also were troubled.
That's personification. The ocean sees its creator and has a full-blown panic attack. It trembles.
And then the weather comes in. The clouds poured out water. The skies sent out a sound. Thine arrows also went abroad.
Arrows means lightning. Asaph is describing a violent, terrifying thunderstorm. Rain pouring down, thunder crashing, lightning striking the ground all around.
Wait a minute, does Exodus actually mention a thunderstorm?
Not explicitly in the prose narrative, no. But Josephus, the Jewish historian, confirms the tradition. He says that while Israel was crossing, the Egyptians were being absolutely hammered by storms, thunderbolts, and rain. He calls it aerial artillery.
So imagine that scene. You're an Israelite. You are walking through a canyon of water. And above you, the sky is exploding. Thunder, lightning, the earth is shaking.
It is terrifying. The voice of thy thunder was in the heaven. The lightnings lightened the world. The earth trembled and shook.
So what's the point of focusing on the violence of it?
It emphasizes God's raw power over chaos. Nature saw God and trembled. The quiet caves of the sea were moved with fear. And yet, and here's the irony, man, the Egyptians, and often us, we refuse to tremble. We are harder than the rocks. We're more stubborn than the sea.
So Asaph builds this huge crescendo. It's loud, it's violent, it's the warrior god marching through the sea, destroying the enemy with lightning. And then we hit section 8, verse 20.
The transition is so abrupt it almost gives you whiplash.
It really does. Thou leddest thy people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron.
We go from the terrible thunder, earthquake, lightning, to the gentle, a flock of sheep.
Why switch to the image of a flock right there?
Because sheep are so significant in the Bible. What are they? They're stupid. They're prone to wander. And they are completely defenseless. You don't lead a pack of wolves. You lead a flock of sheep. They require constant, solicitous care.
And the paradox is that God led this helpless, stupid flock through the terrifying sea.
And then through the wilderness. He didn't take them around the danger. He took them straight through it. But he was with them. The God who throws lightning bolts is the same God who carries the lambs.
And look at the agency mentioned, by the hand of Moses and Aaron.
This is crucial. God is the shepherd, but he uses under-shepherds. He uses human hands.
Moses and Aaron.
God drives his foes away with his own raw power, the storm, but he leads his people using human instrumentality. He uses a stuttering man like Moses and his brother Aaron to hold the hands of the people and guide them.
And then the psalm just ends.
It just stops. Verse 20 is the end. There's no amen. There's no, and so we lived happily ever after. It just cuts to black.
Spurgeon observes that the Spirit of God knows when to cease speaking.
It doesn't need a neat, methodical conclusion. The vision itself is the conclusion. You have seen the power, that's the storm. And you have seen the care, that's the flock.
Yeah.
If you know that the God who controls the lightning is the same God who is leading you like a sheep, what else do you really need to know?
You know you're safe, even if it's dark, even if the sea is loud around you.
Exactly. The smiter of Egypt is the shepherd of Israel. That is the resting place for the soul.
So let's just trace the arc of this deep dive. Asaph starts in the absolute pit. He is screaming at God. He's refusing comfort. He is, in Spurgeon's words, hugging his chains. He spirals into those dark questions. Has God failed?
Then he hits the bottom. He admits his own infirmity. He stops looking at himself, and he looks at the right hand of God.
He engages the cure. He remembers, he meditates, he talks, he recovers the scent like the hound.
He reconciles the sanctuary God's holiness with the sea God's mystery.
He remembers the power of God in the storm of Exodus. And finally, he rests in the simple fact that he is just a sheep in the flock, being led by the hand of God's chosen servants.
It's a movement from introspection, I'm so troubled, to adoration, thou art the God. It's the move from the subjective to the objective. And that is the only way out of spiritual depression. You have to get out of your own head and into God's history.
That is a lot to chew on. But before we close the book on Psalm 77, I want to leave the listener with one final thought, a provocation, if you will.
Go for it.
The psalm ends with, by the hand of Moses and Aaron. God used human hands to lead the flock through the terror. I want you, the listener, to consider this. You might be in the sea right now. You're looking for God to split the sky. You want the lightning. You want the big, undeniable miracle.
But God usually works through means.
Exactly. Consider how God might be leading you through your own sea right now, using the hand of someone you might be overlooking, a friend, a spouse, a pastor, just someone ordinary.
And you can flip it around, too. Consider how you might be the hand of Moses for someone else's flock. There are people around you who are drowning in the noise of their own lives. They need a shepherd. They need a hand to hold. Maybe you are the instrument God wants to use to get them to the other side.
That's the challenge. Don't just wait for the lightning. Look for the hand. Thank you for joining us on Reformed Thinking.
We'll see you next time.